All right.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining and welcome to today's ETRO U with Aaron Kool. He's going to take us through what he does for ETRO is for surveying and how it can help you on your projects. Turn it over to you, Aaron.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. Yeah, my name's Aaron, and I'm ETRO's surveyor. So today I'm going to cover a little bit of background about myself, try to explain what a geomatics technologist is, what I do, a little bit about how it's done, and then I want to save a lot of time at the end for some questions because hopefully you guys have lots. Okay, so for my background, I've been at ETRO now just over a year. My background is mainly legal surveying. I've been surveying now for 20 years. I went to BCIT for 4 years. I've worked Fort St. John, Fort Mac. I've worked a little bit in Winnipeg. Yeah, all different kinds of construction sites, some mining. So I actually have like quite a firm grasp of survey. I've also done a lot of office work, so which kind of works well for what I do at ETRO. Okay, so geomatics technologists. Okay, so there's a few names for surveyors. So here at ETRO, I'm a layout technician. Other names are surveyor, party chief, land surveyor. It's all pretty much the same thing. And sort of, I guess my role here is to lay out survey points, measure topological features and as-built features, structures, and surfaces as per the survey request. So a couple terms there, but as I move on, I'll kind of explain the language. Okay, so some typical things that I'll do at ETRO, I lay out grid lines, concrete, any types of utilities. Pretty much you have a project, you have a plan, you see on the plan something that needs to be located and laid out. That's what I do. I also do topographical surveys, which is it's essentially you take a survey and you make a map of what is present. And usually those are done before the project begins. An as-built survey is done after the project's done. So say you build stairs, for example. I'll come in and measure the stairs and make sure that they match the design. Another thing we can do is a volume survey. So that's just to measure like the amount of dirt that's been moved or dug out or put back into a hole. Monitoring for deformation. So that's say like you're building a building and the neighbors' houses or maybe they're concerned that their foundation is going to crack or something, then I can monitor for any movement there. Yeah, and then run survey control networks. And yeah, that's just kind of part about what I do. Also create sketches, drawings, spreadsheets, reports, whatever is needed to easily represent the data that is being requested. Okay, so I won't go into too much detail into this slide. You can read it after, but this is kind of how I go about my job. So right now we're looking at the early stages of a project. So this is Riley's project, Maplewood. So so what happens is he called me to site. So that's a meeting with the superintendent. There had been a legal survey there before, which established the property boundaries, building locations, and set up what we call survey control. So those are just like nails or hubs or something that I actually set my instrument on that I measure to, and that allows me to measure grid lines and stuff like that. So he also gave me CAD drawings of the design. So I took that information, I surveyed around the perimeter, I set up my own control. And then once that was established, then anything that he needed on site, then I was able to do for him. Yeah, so we complete the field work as directed, process the field work, and then any deliverables that are needed. Okay, so I know it was quick, but so I did a little bit of background about myself, try to explain what a geomatics technologist is, what we do, and how it's done. So now I'm hoping that you guys have lots of questions.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Thanks, Karina. And so, Aaron, I think you kind of touched on this, but the question is kind of partially pre-con focused, but are you establishing? Sorry, I should bring this down. Are you establishing control points on a site, or is that something that we should be doing, having like the legal surveyor do?
I can do, I mean, I can do it. If we're in like an interior project, like, for example, speeders, like we had an outside survey company come and do it, but you need a legal surveyor if you're worried about boundaries. So like a building like Maplewood or like 837 BD, like you need, if you're worried anything about property boundaries, then we would call in first a legal surveyor. They would set up control and then they would give it to me and then I would use it. So then I know that I'm not going to encroach on any legal boundaries or anything. So yeah, it depends on the site, but for yeah, any kind of big projects, yeah, you would typically start with the legal surveyor, and that's usually already was done by the owner, because typically the first thing that's done before a project even starts is that topographical survey where they measure what's on the parcel of land and they sort out the legal boundaries. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I guess the follow-up, which, as I understand, so we can sort of use you for any sort of, sometimes we'll do investigations during pre-con, but we can use your services rather than using a third-party surveyor for that.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And like, depending on the accuracy you need, like, so there's a couple different ways that I can establish what I call control. So the best way is obviously a legal company coming in. So for example, like a job like Brightside, I needed to lay out some planters, but because it was at the end of the project, all the legal control was destroyed and all the survey evidence. So what I was able to do was measure off the building, and from the building corners, I can sort of establish, not super accurately, but say like 5 centimeter accuracy, which was good enough for what we were doing. So I was able to shoot the buildings, figure out where I am in that AutoCAD drawing or PDF, and then I was able to lay out the planters.
Cool. Thank you. That's all for now.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, Vin's got his hand up.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hey, Aaron. Just I think we touched base on this when you were surveying on my job previously. Just want to double check like the accuracy of our equipments and tolerance.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like maybe so that we can all be on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what those are? Like our limitations, plus minus 5 mils, 3 mils.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so it depends on the application. So really with surveying, there's like sort of two different parts. So there's the XY coordinates, and then there's the elevation. So a total station does do both. Um, the accuracy with the gear I have, I can measure to probably 3 millimeters, but realistically it's probably 5. Now it depends on, it would depend on like setup. So like how close am I to the feature that I'm surveying, and like how many control points are around. Like you remember on UBC bio, like like I put grid lines on one side of the building with one set of control, and then on the other side of the building I used a different set of control to lay out grid lines. So right then I know there's going to be like some error in that. Whereas if I lay out all the grid lines from one location, it's more accurate or precise, depending on. I mean, I think we're talking more precision. Like accuracy is like the exact point. Precision is like the repeatability of it and being able to, yeah, like relate it all in a space. Now with elevations, we did purchase a digital level. So elevations are sub-millimeter. Again, it depends on like how many setups and like site conditions, but yeah, to finish off your question, yeah, say 5 millimeters for total station and sub 1 millimeter for elevations. Does that answer your question, Vin?
Yeah. And also, how does that work? Second question is, you know how formworks guys always have their own sets of surveying control points.
Yeah.
How do we works with that? Because like you said, we got the building corners and stuff from the legal survey at the beginning, and then we work from that. But then
Yeah.
how does that get, how do we ensure that smooth transition to the formwork guys when they do their own layout? And then how do they get it back from them when they finish the concrete structure, let's say, and then we start laying out stuff for interior stuff? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that always comes up with surveying. Everybody's gear is slightly different. The biggest part really is procedure. So, for example, on your site, the surveyor there did all his surveying with a tall pole. So typically that's not as accurate as using, say, a mini prism. Like make sure his pole's maybe straight and the bubble is all aligned and everything's calibrated, but you're always going to have a bit of difference between survey companies. The easiest way to do it would be to have me just set all the control. So we go to a site, like moving, I know that was a different situation, but like moving forward, say Applin Martin gives us the control. I go onto site, you tell me where you want control, and this is kind of how we're working at 837B. So you tell me where you want the control, I lay out the control, and then that's what the formers and everybody uses. That way there's only one coordinate system. And then if they want more work, then I'll come and give it to them. And really that's the only way of ensuring that when I go and check their work, it's not going to be like, oh, why is this grid line a centimeter and a half bigger, or say to the west than what the other person's getting? And yeah, I think that's around the only way to do that.
Okay, that makes sense. Last thing is more, not a question,
Yeah.
more like a, I guess, share with
Sure.
the whole team. Here's more like a lesson learned we have in our job too, is I think whenever we lay out grid lines and stuff, just make sure we do some sort of initials and dates, and maybe even if the flooring finish allows, like spray some sort of lacquer, because there's so many grid lines on the floor and you don't know who's who, how old is it, how accurate is it, or it get broom and brushed away when we wash the floor, clean the floor. So it's just a lesson learned from my job. Thanks.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's honestly on every site, it's always a problem. Like, it could be marked out beautifully, and then someone drags, I don't know, some like steel piping or something gets dragged around the floor, and then it gets marked up a bit, and you don't know. So, yeah, it's really good to try to put if possible, try to put your control points or your grid lines in a location where they're not going to get disturbed, and somehow keep them protected. Like, don't put stuff on them, and yeah, as best you can. I know it's a construction site; it's difficult to do, but yeah, that's a great point, man. Anybody else?
Travis has his hand up too.
Sure,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Kind of a question, but kind of a let you explain more to the group as far as what you typically get utilized for on our projects, just so everybody hears it, and then what we aren't as a group utilizing you for as far as services based on your vast history and whatnot. Like, I think those are the two main questions, and then the other is basically from a quality perspective, what should we get in the repetition of calling you for as we progress through a construction site? I know those are big questions, but yeah.
No, those are great questions. Yeah, so typically I'm used for like grid lines, topographic surveys, as-built, like I said, checking, that'd be like checking formwork after it's been poured. Elevation transfers, control, like it's quite the gamut actually here at ETRO. Like I do like lots of stuff. But yeah, typically layout and stuff like say at Oak Ridge, Tony has like, oh, I need to see this bar laid out or something. I'll come in. It's typically stuff that carpenters can't do themselves. So like for Oak Ridge is kind of like it's massive. Like you can't like measure off walls and stuff. I find like a job like some of the more interior jobs, you don't really need me as much because like on the drawing has plans. It's a square building. You can measure off the floor. And what you might need is elevations. So I think that's probably like elevations is actually like the most expensive mistake that could be made in surveying. So I think probably using me more for elevations and checks. It's hard though too because like I find that.
Can you expand on things that you provide elevations for?
Okay, sure. Benchmarks for subtrades. So that way everybody's always on the same page. There's not multiple benchmarks. Elevations for say like angle brackets for like buildings for like PVC vinyl for the brick. Like they had the angle brackets, so I had to set the elevations for that. Or help set the elevations for that. Grading. So say any type of grading for like any kind of landscaping work or something like that. Volumes would be like, okay, how many cubic meters of concrete are going to be in this sidewalk or something like that, right? Like if it's like, if it's a simple rectangle, obviously you guys can figure it out. But like if it's more complex.
Just a question in regards to volumes. Do you get called out from our crews as far as like surveying the existing topographic of a site after a building's demoed to refine the volume of excavation, like to make sure that we're owning, say, like the detail in quantity being excavated? Because what I see is like always trying to determine a starting point with where demos complete, foundations get removed, you've got voids of material that then fill in those spaces. And then technically we're contracting an excavation contractor to take from a specific grade, but it's actually gone down from there. So we have some wiggle room on like some quantity there to discuss, at least anyway.
I haven't had the opportunity yet. Just a good job that would have been for would be Maplewood.
Mhm.
Now, as soon as so before any the machines came on, so demolitions done at Maplewood, I would go and do a topographic survey of the whole site.
Mhm.
So I would create a surface from there. So that would be my baseline. They would excavate out the dirt. I would go into the hole and then also measure that. So I would figure out that volume between the base surface and how much they dug. And then I would determine, how much fill needs to go back in.
Mhm.
But like there's compaction too, right? So that's only a number, but like I've been told that like compaction can be 25% or something like that, right? So, but it's a good tool. I mean, obviously you're keeping track of dump trucks and stuff like that, but it's always a nice tool. And it's happened on previous companies where the excavation contractor is like, oh, we moved this much dirt. And then we're like, how did you move that much dirt? The hole's not that big. Like, you know what I mean? So it's a good second check. It's accurate. It's just like I say, it doesn't for compaction purposes, it can't figure out that.
Yeah, and each material is going to have its own fluff volume once it's excavated. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm not being used for, well, I haven't done any monitoring yet. I measured my first elevator shaft last week, so that's kind of a big one. I can't say there's anything that I'm not being used for. Like maybe volumes, but yeah, like I can't think of anything else really.
Okay.
Trying to get more work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Advertise away.
Sounds good.
Let's go to James for his question next.
Go ahead, James.
Hello.
Hey.
So when it comes to the control being handed off between various parties, I understand that it's going sort of from the legal surveyors to you, and then you're establishing the control system. To then pass that off to whoever's working next, whether that's the form workers or whoever's on site measuring things based in that control system, should we just be giving them a file that says, here's the control system that we're using, here are the points and their coordinates? Or do you want us to put them in contact with you and let you handle that to make sure that it's clear? Like, is it good enough to just hand someone a list of where the coordinates are and what they are? Or should we?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Very dangerous, very dangerous. So, and this has come up actually. So this is another great question. So the control, so I get the control from the legal survey company, and then I don't really like, I'll lay out points for people, but say another contractor comes in with their own surveyor. We kind of have to make a decision, right? If we're going to give them our control, then we should be checking their work. The other way to do it is give them the legal surveys control, let them sort it out themselves, and then I would also check their work. Like, we don't want to take any liability for survey control because we're not a legal survey company. Like, we don't have any protection against it. Like, if they say your control is bad or something, right? Like it can be proven. Like, I mean, I keep like great records and stuff, right? But it's like, I think it's a headache that we don't want. So whoever is the legal survey control, like, yes, I will lay out points and grid lines, but yeah, I don't know specific control points. I would tell them to go to the legal surveyor and let them be responsible for it.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense. Thanks, Aaron. And then Vin has his hand up again.
Oh, you're eager today, Ben. That's great. Yeah, go on.
So many questions for you, Aaron. Just curious, is there, with all the data that you collect and from surveying, besides using it to verify stuff, is there any things we can do with it, especially more for VDC department, like transferring that to VDC department to do some, let's say, topography, like at least they can do a file, they can put it on their 2D model. I'm just trying to figure out, is this such a possibility?
Do we want to share our data with DBC?
No, sorry,
File?
VDC.
Oh, EDC.
VDC, yeah.
No, VDC, like James
Like-
and Zenith team.
Oh, VDC. Oh, yeah. We should be working hand in hand, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like,
And-
like.
I've taken tons of stuff that Aaron's done and folded that into the work that we're doing. Like whenever Aaron lays something out, as much as possible, we do fold that into our environment so that our coordination is working in the same system that he is, and we have the latest information about what exists on site. So my answer is yes, whenever possible, and let's do it more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like any in-house stuff for sure. Like my stuff's solid. Like I have no worries about any of the work I do. But yeah, anything in-house for sure. It's just like being a legal surveyor background, you always protect yourself from being sued. So that's why I would say don't give it to an outside company. But yeah, any in-house stuff, yeah, you're welcome to whatever information you want.
All right, there's no more hands. So if there are more questions, you can find Aaron in our contact directory and drop him a line, an email, or give him a call, and he's happy to help you out. And I'm sure you guys have lots of work for him going ahead. Thanks, Aaron.
So yeah, guys, thanks for listening. And so yeah, any questions, feel free to reach out.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good night. Bye.